What is narcissism? Narcissistic personality disorder is defined as a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in thoughts or behavior, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. It's more than mere arrogance or vanity. Welcome back to another Broken Podcast. I'm Nick Taylor, and today we're diving into a topic that is incredibly personal, incredibly painful, and incredibly important: narcissism. Specifically, narcissistic abuse. Many people may have some narcissistic qualities like wanting praise or feeling entitled without having the full disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder requires meeting at least 5 of 9 strict criteria across different situations. Someone with narcissistic traits might sometimes act self-centered, but a person with NPD shows those traits consistently and cannot easily accept feedback or responsibility. So today we're going to talk about what narcissism really is, how to spot it, and what happens when you stay too long in a relationship with a narcissist. And most importantly, how you can begin to heal. The word narcissist comes from the myth of Narcissus. He fell in love with his own reflection. And it is noteworthy that in psychology, narcissism isn't only about physical beauty. It can involve any area where a person feels superior, like talent, wealth, or intelligence. People with narcissistic personality disorder tend to put their own needs and desires first, without regard for how it affects others. This lack of empathy and entitlement is key, and calling out narcissistic abuse is valid. Victims often question themselves, but many relationships are affected by narcissistic behavior. It's okay to learn the terms and seek support. Let's talk about some red flags, because narcissists rarely come into your life waving a giant sign that says, "I'm here to destroy your self-worth." They're often charming, magnetic even. Early on, narcissists often love bomb, showering you with praise, gifts, or attention, making you feel special. In romantic contexts, this fairy tale phase can feel intoxicating. This is sometimes called the idealization stage. But once they feel like they've got you, that's when the switch flips. Suddenly, you're not enough. They nitpick, criticize, belittle. You go from being on a pedestal to being under their shoe. Once you're attached, they may suddenly become critical, demeaning, or indifferent. They belittle your achievements, call you names, or show blatant disrespect. You may notice constant criticism or humiliation aimed at chipping away your self-esteem. A core red flag is cruelty without remorse. Narcissists often make cruel jokes mocking others, including you, or show indifference when you're upset. They rarely comfort others in pain or genuinely listen to feelings. And if you try to call them out, it's your fault, every time. That's gaslighting. When they twist the story so hard, you start questioning your own memory. You might even start to think that you're the problem. They never admit wrongdoing. Instead, all mistakes are someone else's fault. You might find yourself constantly apologizing to keep the peace. They expect special treatment. Narcissists hate rules. They may treat them as optional for themselves and demand the compliance of them from others. Watch for exploitive behavior, taking advantage of friends or coworkers to get what they want. And they manipulate. Oh, do they manipulate? Narcissists use tactics like intimidation or threats to you or your loved ones to control situations. For example, a toxic partner might threaten to ruin your reputation or keep you from seeing your children if you try to leave. These are blatant control tactics. And if it gets them control, they'll use it. They often believe others are envious of them, while they themselves feel intense envy. They may belittle your friends' or family's success, or accuse you of being jealous when you set boundaries. Research shows narcissists maintain relationships through manipulation and games. They may be very charming publicly, but verbally abusive in private. Survivors often recall that narcissists could spin stories to make themselves the victim. Now I want to say this, it's not just romantic partners. Narcissistic patterns can appear with family or at work. For example, a narcissistic parent might always make situations about themselves, or a narcissistic boss might publicly embarrass employees. Narcissists may target empathetic or sensitive people in any context, and it can be parents, bosses, siblings, friends, anyone. The patterns are the same: charm, control, and then cruelty. Pay attention to how they handle hurt or criticism. People with narcissistic traits often lash out or become eerily calm rather than taking responsibility. A key warning sign, especially post-breakup, is intense rage or obsession over an ex, or a history of toxic breakups. They may not let go and engage in stalking or smear campaigns. I've experienced people who exhibit narcissistic traits throughout my whole life. I only know of one that was officially diagnosed, but diagnosis is pretty rare. Exes, previous bosses and management, even people I considered friends, and each of those relationships was parasitic. Narcissists typically want to engage in the relationships in which they have the most control, and those that benefit them the most. Each of those relationships took more of me with them, leaving me feeling hollow and empty. The worst part was that they seemed to prey on my weaknesses, my low self-worth, my need for validation, my body dysmorphia. They all had a way of finding these soft spots and digging into them. These red flags can leave deep scars. Let's talk about those of us that are on the receiving end of one of those relationships. What does it actually do to you? Living with a narcissist often causes chronic stress. Emotionally, it's devastating. You start out thinking that you met someone amazing, and slowly, without realizing it, you're torn down, bit by bit, word by word. Victims report high rates of anxiety, depression, and even PTSD-like symptoms. The constant criticism and manipulation can make you feel worthless or broken. Over time, you may internalize their insults and truly believe you're the problem, because that's what constant gaslighting does. Clinicians sometimes call this cluster of symptoms narcissistic abuse syndrome. Your self-esteem takes a massive hit. You stop trusting your instincts. You might isolate from friends or family, either because the narcissist wants it that way or because you're too embarrassed to talk about what's happening. The relentless belittling undermines your confidence. You might second guess your abilities or decisions, fearing you'll never be good enough. Simple mistakes can trigger disproportionate criticism, teaching you to walk on eggshells. Gaslighting makes you question your reality. One moment you're cherished, the next you're blamed for everything. It's common to feel crazy or wonder if you're overreacting, because narcissists often twist the facts. Remember, feeling confused or guilty is a normal response to manipulative abuse. The abuse was not your fault. Narcissists often isolate victims from friends or family, either by directly manipulating or by making you feel ashamed to talk about the abuse. You may find yourself withdrawing socially, either because the narcissist forbids outside contact or because you feel embarrassed. Loss of support networks intensifies loneliness, and it can be an overall goal for these abusers. Isolation makes someone all that much easier to control. After this specific type of abuse, survivors can struggle to trust others. You might become hypervigilant or overcautious in new relationships. Many victims repeat unhealthy patterns until they heal. People-pleasing and boundary issues are common because narcissistic abuse teaches you to put others' needs before your own just so you can survive. And physically, the body pays too. Chronic stress from abuse affects the body. Victims often experience insomnia, headaches, stomach issues, or even muscle tension. Some develop unhealthy coping habits like overeating or substance use to numb the pain. Over time, untreated trauma can contribute to serious health problems. Survivors sometimes report trouble concentrating, keeping a job, or performing daily tasks due to anxiety or low energy. In extreme cases, people feel like they're just surviving and may even have suicidal thoughts when hope feels lost. It bears repeating. Suicidal thoughts are a mental health emergency. Seek help immediately if you feel this way. I've had to do it myself. There's no shame in doing it. Narcissistic abuse is more common than you think. One study found that 1 in 4 people have experienced some form of narcissistic abuse in a relationship. Survivors also frequently suffer financial abuse and workplace abuse. 60 to 80% reporting money control issues, and about 21% report narcissistic bullying at work. Research also suggests women may experience narcissistic abuse at higher rates than men. If the abuser is a parent or family member, the impact can be deep. Kids may develop anxious or avoidant attachment styles and have trouble forming healthy relationships later in life. They often carry guilt or a deep-seated fear of abandonment into adulthood. One of the hardest parts? The trauma bond. That emotional attachment that forms when someone's hurting you. But every now and then they throw you a scrap of affection. And you cling to it. You tell yourself maybe they're changing, but the cycle just keeps spinning. And if it's a parent, boss, or a friend, the damage shows up differently, but just as deeply. You learn to suppress your needs, to walk on eggshells. You carry that with you long after that relationship ends. I can attest to all of this being part of the narcissistic experience. Through the plethora of emotionally, mentally, and even physically abusive relationships that I have endured with someone demonstrating narcissistic tendencies, I ended up feeling as if I had no value. As if I would never be good enough for anyone. And since I was experiencing the same types of relationships through work and friendships as well, it amplified the feeling across all aspects of my life. I almost feel like I was a magnet for narcissism for years. I would leave a narcissistic relationship just to get a narcissistic boss. I'd leave an abusive workplace only to pick up a narcissistic friendship. It was a constant cycle. It's almost as if people with these tendencies have some kind of sixth sense to identify people who have fell victim to this kind of treatment before. And they will happily pick up where the last abuser left off. None of us ever intended to end up in these relationships, whether it was romantic, platonic, or work-related. We fall for the act, the one where abusers create a false safe space. And it is so much easier to fall for when you're searching for exactly what their facade has to offer. And every time, like clockwork, the second you feel safe enough, they flip the script on you. There's no shame in that. You have to understand that narcissists are really good at what they do, and they have been fine-tuning all their skills throughout the entirety of their life, learning the best ways to make people feel safe, as well as the easiest ways to manipulate people at the same time. They are constantly refining their tactics, evaluating what works and what doesn't in order to gain what they truly desire, which is an overwhelming control of another person, by whatever means necessary. Knowing these effects, it's clear how important it is to break free and start healing. But leaving a narcissistic relationship has its own challenges. So let's talk about getting out, because recognizing the abuse is one thing, but leaving, that's a whole other level of hard. Acknowledge that it's not your fault and you deserve respect. Labeling the behavior as abuse can be empowering. Remember, even if the narcissist oscillates between affection and cruelty, those cycles are part of the abuse, not a reflection of your worth. You don't deserve the abuse. You didn't let it happen. You survived it. Understand that feeling emotionally attached to the abuser is a normal survival response. The intermittent kindness keeps you hopeful. Realize these feelings are symptoms of the abuse cycle, not true love or loyalty. This awareness is the first step to breaking that bond. But leaving safely takes planning, especially if the narcissist is controlling or aggressive. When you decide to leave, do it carefully. Many abusers escalate threats or harassment after a breakup. Consider a safety plan. Find a trusted friend to stay with, have an emergency contact, save some money secretly. And then take some safety measures at home. Change the locks, block them on social media, and document any threats if possible. No contact is the golden standard. But if no contact isn't possible, you have to set very strict limits. Because there's situations like sharing kids where you're going to have to communicate, but you need to do it only about the essentials, like the logistics of having those kids. And you need to do so in writing when you can. The gray rock method can help when communication is unavoidable, and that's just staying neutral and unengaging. The more you can remove yourself from their influence, the safer and stronger that you'll become. It can be tempting to respond in kind, but avoid escalating. Narcissists often want to provoke you into reacting. Staying calm or disconnected is usually more effective. If you feel anger or desire for revenge, talk to someone trusted instead of confronting them. They tend to have a goal to fuel your fire to get you into an emotional state in order for them to exploit it. Therapy helps a lot and is crucial. A trauma-informed therapist can help you process what happened and rebuild self-esteem. Therapies like CBT, DBT, or EMDR can help reset natural beliefs and heal trauma. You deserve professional support to navigate this. Consider joining a narcissistic abuse support group, online or locally. These groups offer validation and understanding you won't get elsewhere. Hearing others' stories can help you see that you're not alone, and it reminds you that healing is possible. Domestic violence hotlines and centers also recognize emotional abuse. They can connect you with resources or shelters if needed. Prioritize your well-being. This includes basic needs and emotional care, like sleep, nutrition, and exercising, or journaling, meditation, and hobbies. Practice grounding techniques when anxiety spikes. Remind yourself daily, I survived that abuse, and I am worthy of love and respect. Self-compassion is key. You have to be patient with yourself. It's normal to feel grief, anger, or doubt. You may miss the good times or feel guilt. Acknowledge these feelings without judgment. Therapy or support networks can help you reframe blame and reinforce that the narcissist's actions were not your fault. Abuse often makes victims lose touch with who they really are. Engage in activities that reflect your true interests and values. Set small goals to regain confidence, like taking a class or volunteering. Over time, your sense of self will strengthen beyond the abuse. And when you start rebuilding your life, focus on rediscovering who you are. What you love, what you want, that's how you start healing. Don't hesitate to seek out trauma specialists. Group or individual therapy, even couples or family therapy, can be tools for healing. Remember, even joining a group like a therapy circle or using recovery apps can provide structure and support, such as circles for survivors. Leaving isn't easy. In my own experiences, I believed I needed to stay in a relationship because no one else would ever love me. I believed I couldn't quit my job because I would never be good at anything else. I believed I couldn't leave a friendship because I owed them too much. I never had anything tying me to a narcissist other than a trauma bond. My wife, on the other hand, did. Our oldest two kids she had in her first marriage. I can remember back before we were even together that I could tell when he called because her voice would change, as well as how she would speak. I also remember seeing her physical reaction when he would show up somewhere, even if she knew that he was coming. Her hair would stand on end, her posture would change, and her facial expressions would seem forced. Even after leaving him, she was still subjected to interacting with him whenever he would show up for the kids. And although that was inconsistent, her communication wasn't because she was following the parenting plan to a T. I remember admiring and looking up to her because of the immense amount of strength that must have taken. I'm not sure I could ever do that with any one of my abusers, especially not with the composure she did. Thankfully, I was able to adopt our oldest two. releasing that tie to her abuser with narcissistic tendencies. But even after the tie was broken, my wife still had to find a way to pick up the broken pieces of herself and put them back together. I've been here along the way to watch her do that and overcome so much more than just this alone. She is one of the strongest people that I have ever met, and she was a huge inspiration for me to confront my own damage from those trauma-bonded relationships that I deal with. And guys, she would even tell you, healing from this is not linear. It doesn't happen fast, and you have to be prepared for it to resurface again in the future. But there is life after abuse, and you can get away. Now I want to touch on something briefly and carefully, because I know some of y'all are wondering, can they change? The truth? Maybe, but it has to be their choice, not yours. You cannot fix a narcissist. You cannot love them into being a better person. The narcissist must be the one to want help. NPD is a deeply ingrained personality disorder. Most individuals with NPD don't believe that they have a problem, so they rarely seek treatment on their own. Even with therapy, change is difficult. Studies and clinicians note that the narcissists often have limited self-awareness. They might learn to manage behaviors or improve some empathy, but a complete personality shift is unlikely. A full transformation? That's rare. And it's never your job to wait around for it. Any improvement usually comes from years of constant therapy and life changes. According to experts, only if a narcissist sincerely acknowledges their issues and commits to long-term therapy will there be any chance of a meaningful change. However, there is no guarantee that they will stop abusive behaviors just because they're in therapy or express remorse. So don't hold on hoping they'll change. Focus on you, your healing, your peace. That's the part that you can control. It is not your job to fix or heal them. You cannot force someone to change their personality. Focus on your safety and growth instead. If a narcissist improves, it's because they worked on themselves, not because you did anything to deserve it. Victims often unfairly blame themselves or try harder. The abuser's choices are their own, and it is their responsibility to work on themselves. They have to do it on their own. If you recognize these signs in your life, your feelings of hurt and confusion are valid. Healing is a journey, but many survivors rebuild stronger with healthier relationships later on. Specialized help is available. From therapists to support groups to hotlines, reaching out is a sign of strength. You do not have to heal alone. With time, support, and self-compassion, survivors of narcissistic abuse can recover their confidence and peace. The narcissist's behavior was never your fault, and you deserve a life free from manipulation and fear. If this episode hits home, if you're realizing you might have been in a narcissistic relationship, I just want to say, I see you, I believe you, and you are not crazy. Your pain is real. The confusion is real, but so is the possibility of healing. If you know someone that needs to hear this message, send this episode to them. Sometimes just hearing it put a different way from another person is all someone needs to recognize the situation that they're in. It takes time. It takes help. But you can get your life back. You can feel joy again. You can trust yourself again. And you can have healthy, beautiful relationships built on truth, not fear. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Another Broken Podcast. As always, feel free to reach out to us via email at brokenmedia1984@gmail.com, on TikTok under the username Another Broken Dad, or just by commenting on this episode. Whatever way, you know I would love to hear from you. Remember, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are healing. And I am so proud of you. Until next time, I'm Nick Taylor. Take care, guys.